The hallmark of the evolution of mammalian brains was the appearance of the neocortex. Early primates evolved from small-brained nocturnal insect-eating mammals some 60 million years ago and evolved into present-day monkeys, apes, and humans. All modern anthropoids are diurnal, with the exception of our monkeys. Animals that are diurnal are usually awake and active during the day. Early primates already differed from most of the early mammals by having more neocortex in proportion to the rest of the brain, and more neocortex devoted to the temporal lobes where visual processing occurs. The evolution of the primary visual cortex may be the reason why modern anthropoids are diurnal. The neocortex is also called the six-layered cortex, involved in higher-order brain functions such as sensory perception, cognition, motor commands, spatial reasoning, and language. It makes up the largest part of the cerebral cortex. In primates and other larger mammals, it has deep grooves called sulci and ridges called gyri or gyri. These gyri are also functionally significant in that the precentral gyrus contains the primary motor cortex, important for the control of movement, and the postcentral gyrus contains the primary somatic sensory cortex, which is important for the bodily senses. The remaining subdivisions of the forebrain lie deeper within the cerebral hemispheres. The cerebral cortex of the human brain is highly convoluted, meaning it has many folds and creases. The foldings in the brain enable its expansion. The brain forms folds during fetal development that allow fitting the enlarged neocortex into restricted spaces of the skull. In mammals, increasing convolutions of the brain are characteristics of animals with more advanced brains. Therefore, individual intelligence within humans might be modulated by the degree of folding in certain cortical regions. The number and extent of the convolutions, as well as their depth, appear to bear a close relation to the intellectual power of the individual, as is shown in their increasing complexity of arrangement as we ascend from the lowest mammalia up to man. The cerebrum in man constitutes the largest portion of the encephalon. Its upper surface is of an oval form and divided into two lateral halves or hemispheres by the great longitudinal fissure. The corpus callosum connects the left side of the brain to the right side. Corpus callosum is Latin for tough body. It's the largest connective pathway in the brain. The convolutions on the outer convex surface of the hemispheres are frequently branched like the letter Y in their course upwards and backwards towards the longitudinal fissure. These convolutions attain their greatest development in man and are a special characteristics of the human brain. They are slender symmetrical on the two sides. Although gyral and sulcal patterns vary from individual to individual, there are some fairly consistent landmarks that help divide the hemispheres into four lobes. The names of the lobes are derived from the cranial bones that overlie them. They are occipital, temporal, parietal, and frontal. A neural circuit is a population of neurons interconnected by synapses to carry out specific function when activated. Neural circuits interconnect to one another to form large-scale brain networks. In the brain alone, there are billions of neurons and they have to work together to function in a normal manner. The human brain is estimated to contain 100 billion neurons and several times as many supporting cells. Electric currents in the vastly complex system of billions of neurons in our body allow us to sense the world, control parts of our body, and to think. The function of each sensory system is to provide the CNS with a representation of the external world. Nerve conduction is a general term for electrical signals carried by nerve cells. Perception of a sensory experience can change even though the input remains the same. A classic example can be seen in the image of a vase that can also be perceived as two faces, pointed nose to nose. In the case of the faces and the vase, the image remains the same, the sensory input remains constant, but the perception of what is being viewed changes as the viewer's attention wanders.